It's hard to imagine anyone more passionate about the rape and strangulation of little Mary Fagan than her great niece, Mary Fagan Keene.
Leo Frank was a sexual pervert, and that he raped her and murdered her.
The jury found Frank guilty in 1913. Neat files in her home today hold reminders that many women testified against Frank because of his inappropriate sexual behavior toward them.
A lot of the women that testified against him, with that, there were 20 women, a lot of them were former employees, and they left.
Did they say why they left?
Yes.
Because?
Because Leo Frank did immoral, improper things to them.
In these files at the Georgia Archives, the lawyer for one of the star witnesses against Frank is convinced he made a horrible mistake.
Horrible, convicting an innocent man. His own client, star witness Jim Conley's language is in those notes, the lawyer came to believe. And if Frank did not compose them, Jim Conley did, he thought, and he's the murderer. Undo the wrong that I have helped do. Those sensational doubts sent to the governor, who also doubted Frank's conviction, commuted his death sentence. That caused an angry mob to kidnap Frank from prison and lynch him.
Shortly before dawn on May 2, 1932, 11-year-old Porter Puryear was asleep in his bed when he heard gunfire. Frightened, the little boy hurried to the other room where his mother and sister were sleeping. Porter quickly climbed under the covers of the bed and found himself lying in something moist. His shoulder was soaked in it. The boy turned on a lamp and was met with the truly horrifying sight of his mother and sister, both of whom had suffered devastating head injuries from a brutal attack. Porter then realized that his shoulder was soaked with their blood. This was, more or less, the court testimony of Stanley Puryear's son as he described the night that violence consumed the Puryear house. Memphis police officer W.C. Davis said he was at home having a smoke when he heard the gunshots. The gunshots were quickly followed by a man shouting, "Help! Help! There's been murder done!" Officer Davis quickly put on some pants and rushed out the door to investigate. The disturbance had roused other neighbors as well, and soon a small crowd of onlookers had gathered at Stanley Puryear's house to see what all the commotion was about. Officer Davis found Mr. Puryear standing in the hallway of his house, huffing and puffing and visibly shaken. Puryear quickly told his police officer neighbor about how a black man had killed Mrs. Puryear and their daughter with an axe that Puryear now held in his hands as he described the horrible crime to Officer Davis. 38-year-old Stanley Puryear, owner of an auto repair shop, explained the deaths of his wife, daughter, and Mr. Jameson with his very convincing tale of the axe-wielding black man who allegedly entered the house in the dark of night to commit a robbery, and in doing so he violently took the lives of the mother and daughter. And then, this alleged axe murderer attempted to flee the scene, at which point Stanley Puryear and his trusty Winchester avenged this horrible crime with 2 shotgun blasts. When the newspapers got wind of what had happened, some publications took a measured approach and tried to report the facts at least somewhat objectively. But for many newspapers, news of a black man savagely killing an innocent mother and child with an axe, whether it was true or not, was too good to pass up, and the resulting headlines would eventually prove to be very, very wrong. In the hours that followed his early morning cries of murder, Puryear told his story to police in riveting detail, but there was one very important bit that he left out. Puryear failed to mention to police that, perhaps an hour before violence erupted in his home, he was driving near Beale Street and 4th, right where the FedEx Forum is currently located. According to Storyboard Memphis, a local arts and culture magazine, the area around Beale Street and 4th in the 1930s was a predominantly black neighborhood, and after the murders at the Puryear house, numerous Beale Street witnesses came forward with sworn statements that they saw a heavy-set, red-faced man going around trying to hire one of them to help with moving some boxes of whiskey at 4 a.m. on a Monday. The witnesses all had their reasons for not taking the man up on his oddly timed offer in the dead of night. but they said that one man had accepted the offer as they watched Will Jamison climb into the red-faced man's car on Beale Street, and the witnesses would later identify Stanley Puryear as the red-faced man, one of them even giving an accurate description of his car. And how exactly did the authorities come by these witnesses? They were led to that spot at Beale Street and 4th by Mr. Will Jamison himself, the man who had been shot twice by Mr. Puryear. Unbeknownst to Puryear, the man he had shot twice, the alleged axe murderer he chased out of his home with gunfire, had stumbled into the back alley behind the house and made it to a nearby street. It was there that passing police officers stopped their patrol car to assist Mr. Jamison. Jamison was fading fast, so officers called an ambulance and he was rushed to the hospital. And before he died of his injuries roughly 5 hours after being shot, Jamison was able to tell the police his version of events. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. According to the San Francisco Examiner, one of the conversations that Jamison had with police went like this. Jamison: "Boss, give me a drink of water and take my shoes off. I don't want to die with them on. I know I am dying." Police: "Who shot you, boy?" Jamison: "A red-faced, middle-aged man. He picked me up on Beale Street. Said he'd give me $3 to help him move some whiskey. He took me to his house and went in. I stayed out in the garage. Pretty soon, he called me from inside the house. I started in. When I got to the door, he shot me. I turned and ran. Then he shot me again." Police: "He ought to have shot you. You killed his wife and child." Jamison: "Boss, I am dying. Please take my shoes off. I ain't got no reason to lie to you all. I ain't seen no white woman and baby. I ain't done nothing. He just called me to the door and shot me." The information the witnesses gave was accurate. While the police gathered witnesses who all backed up Jamison's account of being hired and picked up by Puryear, Puryear's story was quickly unraveling. The prosecution held up Sunshine as Puryear's motive for killing Mrs. Puryear and their little girl, and attempting to pin those murders on Jamison. Of course, Sunshine and Puryear himself both denied having an affair, but witnesses testified that Puryear had given Sunshine a scandalous pair of red pajamas and a silk nightdress as gifts. There was also testimony from a surprise visitor to Sunshine's home that she saw Puryear in Sunshine's bed, and Sunshine herself was clad in slinky lingerie. And then there was the matter of the recently divorced Sunshine's impatience to get remarried, and she was threatening to marry another man if Puryear remained unavailable. Mrs. Puryear had previously refused to grant her husband a divorce, citing her strong religious beliefs, leaving poor Mr. Puryear in a lurch. Various witnesses to Jamison's deathbed statements about what he said happened were also called to testify, but apparently not all of these witnesses were called, a move the prosecution would later regret. The trial, which had turned into quite the public spectacle, dragged on for close to 3 weeks. At least part of the intense public interest in the trial stemmed from the fact that Stanley Puryear, a white man, was facing the electric chair for killing Will Jamison, a black man, which in the 1930s was practically unheard of in the South. After 22 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with its verdict. Not guilty. Puryear, along with family members and apparently everyone in the courtroom, celebrated the decision. But the celebration was short-lived, as Puryear still had to face 2 additional trials for the murders of his wife and daughter. In November of 1934, a jury had finally found Stanley Puryear guilty of something. He was convicted of the second-degree murder of his wife, and the jury recommended a sentence of 15 years in the state penitentiary. But alas, Puryear would manage to sidestep justice once again. Puryear's attorney immediately submitted an appeal to the Tennessee Supreme Court, alleging improper statements made by the prosecution during the trial. The appeal was granted just a few weeks later, and Stanley Puryear was, again, a free man. Puryear wouldn't face his fourth murder trial until 1937, when he was again found guilty, this time being sentenced to 20 years for the murder of his wife. And the Attorney General, clearly fed up with how Puryear had managed to stay out of prison for so long, declared, "Don't forget, I'm going to try him for killing the little girl next." Thanks to legal maneuvering by Puryear's attorney, the convicted killer wouldn't be hauled off to prison until April of 1939, nearly 7 years after the horrifying murders of Mrs. Puryear, 8-year-old Aurelia Xenia, and Will Jameson. Later that year, Puryear had the gall to ask for clemency due to his failing health, which was instantly denied. In November of 1941, just 2.5 years into his 20-year sentence for viciously murdering his wife, and while yet another appeal was pending on his conviction for murdering his 8-year-old daughter, Stanley Puryear died in prison of heart complications.
It was 4 a.m. in Philadelphia when the radio call came in. Cop shot. A white police sergeant said he'd been shot by a black man. Officers responded in force. An all-out search of the African-American neighborhood in Philadelphia's 19th precinct, where Sergeant Robert Ralston said it all went down. The sergeant told the story this way. He'd come across 2 black men along the railroad tracks on the morning of April 5th. One ran away, he said. The other pointed a silver revolver at his head. He knocked it away, he said, but it fired anyway, and the bullet grazed his left shoulder. He also said he fired 1 shot, but wasn't sure if he'd struck the suspect. Police gave thanks their man had survived. Tragedy averted, they said. The white cop described the shooter this way: dark skin, braided hair, and a tattoo next to his eye. But police never found the black shooter or anyone matching that description. And now, more than a month later, we know why. The real story? The 2 black men the cop said he encountered never existed. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey says Sergeant Ralston made the whole thing up.
So you have coked out Kyle here, and he looks like he's on that stuff, but his real name is actually Gordon Ray Wood. And he basically claimed that, and it's always 2, he claimed that 2 black men shot him. Turns out he was lying and the guy actually shot himself.
What's your name, ma'am, if you don't mind me asking? Is it okay if I have your name?
Let's call the cops first.
No problem at all.
Now you're recording me.
No problem. I have a right to.
I didn't come out here and say, excuse
No,
me,
no.
do you have my son's phone?
But when I told you, no, you did.
I did not come at you like that.
You did.
No, I did not.
You did.
Sir,
and when you're running after me and following me, believe me, I've been racially profiled so long.
Hello?
And I'm very scared of that.
Yes. See.
State Police Boston recorded emergency 510.
My wife's been shot. I've been shot.
Where is this, sir?
I have no idea. I'm off. I've been coming from Tremont, Brigham and Women's Hospital.
On October 23, 1989, this call came into the Massachusetts State Police. It was made from a car phone.
Where are you right now, sir? Can you indicate to me?
No, I don't know. He made us go to an abandoned area.
Okay, sir. Can you see out the windows? Can you tell me where you are, please?
No. I don't know. I don't see any signs. Oh, God.
Are you near Brigham and Women's Hospital?
No, we went straight through.
What kind of car do you have, sir?
Pardon me?
What kind of vehicle do you have?
Charles Stuart, the man on the phone, had been shot in the stomach. Disoriented and losing blood, he was unable to tell the police which street he was on.
Sir.
Are you in the city of Boston, though?
Yes.
Can you give me any indication where you might be? Any buildings?
No.
Okay, has your wife been shot as well?
Yes. In the head.
In the head?
Yeah, I ducked down.
Even while being loaded into the ambulance, Charles Stuart had been articulate on who had committed this terrible crime.
What do you look like? Blackmail. Blackmail? What do you have on for clothing, do you remember? Your partner there, but he wants to get all over it. Black, any stripes on it?
A black perpetrator, approximately 6 feet tall and in his 30s, had jumped into the steward's car while it was idling at a red light. He demanded Carol's purse and jewelry, but then got jittery and accused Charles of being 5-0, that is, a cop. The perpetrator had shot Carol in the head and Charles in the side before running away. Charles described him as having a raspy voice and a black tracksuit with a red stripe. Boston's racial tensions up until this point have been well documented and were already simmering before this story exploded onto newsstands. The Stuarts were held up as a model American family terrorized by a gang member. Demands to reinstate the death penalty began. Boston's stop-and-frisk policy allows cops to legally detain anybody they believe might be a reasonable suspect in a crime. In this case, it became an excuse to stop and harass hundreds of black men. Over a 4-day period, 150 homes were searched every single day, for no other reason than that they were owned by black citizens. Tito Jackson, who years later would become a Boston city councilor, was stopped and forced to drop his pants on the street 5 times because he was told he looked like the perpetrator in the Carol Stuart case. It's hard to believe that that could have been true because at the time he was 14 years old, but police arrested Willie Bennett when they found that he matched the perpetrator's description. 6 feet tall, in his mid-30s with a raspy voice. When put in a police lineup, Chuck Stuart identified him as looking like the man who shot my wife. Willie Bennett was arrested. Shortly after Willie Bennett's arrest, there was a shocking twist in the case. Charles Stuart's brother Matthew, who had carried Carol's casket at her funeral, came to the police with a confession. The night that Carol was shot, Charles Stuart had paid his brother $10,000 to do him a favor. All Matthew had to do was meet Charles at a predetermined location where the car would be stopped after the birthing class. When Matthew approached the car that night, Charles tossed him Carol's purse, her jewelry, and the gun used to shoot the couple. Matthew took all of it and threw it in the river. In other words, there was no black man in the car that night. Charles Stuart had made a plan ahead of time to kill his wife. He shot himself in the side in order to cover up the crime and paid his brother to destroy the evidence. Criticism of the investigation and the aggressive racial profiling carried out by police was swift.
The case did not go forward in the manner that it should. They were too preoccupied with the story that Charles Stuart gave, which is now a total fabrication, and because of that, hundreds of black males were harassed.
Chuck Turner, a community organizer, told Jet magazine, "Black people in particular have to look at it and wonder what hope do we have for justice in a country that took this man's lie and made him and his family a symbol of national mourning."
You, the motherfucker would fuck with me, I'm telling you right now, if you fucking hit me or threaten my life, I would fucking kill that motherfucker, whatever I had in that fucking house. And before the police got here, I would fucking put marks all over my shit and make it like he was trying to fucking kill me. I goddamn guarantee you, what would it look like? Self-fucking-defense. Fuck that piece of shit.
Nick, we can hear on this tape, Middlebrooks, he's speculating about murdering a local black resident here named Vincent Bias. Now, he was saying that he was going to stage the crime scene, make it look like self-defense. This rage that he's expressing on this tape, reportedly it comes from an arrest that he made. He arrested Bias prior to this on a drug charge. Bias was released on bail. He's so angry over this. He's talking about putting a bullet in him and making it look like self-defense. And the guy is still a practicing police officer walking the streets of Alexandra, Alabama right now.
There's a Florida man. He had a plan. This Florida man planned to kill his ex-girlfriend and blame Black Lives Matter. I kid you not. This was his actual plot. As a matter of fact, he's not the only person to come up with a plot like this, by the way. 51-year-old Florida man planned to have his 22-year-old ex-girlfriend, her sister, and her brother-in-law killed, and then pin the murders on Black Lives Matter protesters. That's what he planned to do. His name is Daniel Slater. Let's get a picture up of Daniel. That's him. Daniel Slater hired a hitman to carry out the crimes, but it was stopped when the individual turned out to be an undercover FBI agent.
The security guard that claimed he was shot on the campus of St. Catherine University now says he made the whole story up. Brent Ahlers admitted to police that he actually shot himself and lied to cover it up. This afternoon, the school says the 25-year-old no longer works for the university. The shooting happened Tuesday night on the southwest corner of campus. Police spent hours searching for the man they thought shot him. Police arrested Ahlers yesterday for filing a false report. As Kate Raddick shows us, more charges are possible.
A report of a shooting at St. Catherine University Tuesday night prompted the response of 55 police officers, a Minnesota State Patrol helicopter, and K-9 units. The campus went on lockdown.
It had residents of the McGroveland and Highland Park communities fearful that a suspect was on the loose and they could be victimized at any moment.
24 hours later, the security guard who was shot admitted he shot himself by accident. Brent Ahlers told police he made up a shooter, saying it was a black man in a sweatshirt out of fear that he would lose his job. Ahlers wasn't allowed to have a gun on campus.
It takes an intentional pulling of the trigger in order to actually discharge a firearm.
Kevin Vick is a gun safety expert. He says incidents like the one at St. Kate's give responsible gun owners a bad name.
If you've properly trained and you're following the safety rules, this incident won't happen.
We tried to ask Ahlers about the incident at his apartment in St. Louis Park.
Hello, this is Brent.
Hi, Brent. This is Kate Raddick at WCCO TV. Would you have a minute to chat with me? Ahlers was booked into Ramsey County Jail for falsely reporting a crime before being released. Now the case is with the city attorney's office to determine any further charges.
It's a successful end to this incident.
1,800 students were on lockdown during that manhunt for the false suspect, along with firing Ahlers. The university says it strongly condemns racial discrimination, racial stereotyping, and racial profiling of any kind.
All right. Kate, thank you.
Now to new developments in the case of the man charged with strangling and sexually assaulting an 11-year-old girl in Pasadena. Juan Carlos Garcia Rodriguez was in a Harris County court early this morning where a judge denied him bail on capital murder charges. Court records show Garcia Rodriguez, who was extradited yesterday from Louisiana, denies being involved in Maria Gonzalez's death. He claims he was forced at gunpoint by two black men to commit the sexual assault. A viewing service was held for Maria at a church in Pasadena yesterday. She's being flown back to Guatemala, where she'll be laid to rest.
And that accusation, it's simply an allegation. My client has a right to a trial, a right to defend himself, and at this time, he's innocent until the state proves him guilty.
Prosecutors are waiting to get DNA evidence from Guatemala to help with their case. Garcia Rodriguez is due back in court on October 30th.
She's not in danger. She's not in danger. You see her? Okay, good. I'm glad I got this online. Help me.
On May 21st, back in 2020, there was an Amber Alert issued for 9-year-old Alexandra Ripley, who went missing that evening in West Kendall, Florida. His 45-year-old mother, Patricia, would phone the authorities and tell them her son had been kidnapped moments beforehand by two African-American men. The statewide Amber Alert said he was abducted by these two males who were driving a light blue four-door sedan, and it resulted in a massive search being launched to find the 9-year-old boy, who was severely autistic and nonverbal. The search didn't even last 24 hours before he was found in a body of water near a local golf and country club. Although officers would keep questioning Patricia, and as mentioned, Patricia would continue giving conflicting statements to the investigators regarding exactly what happened up to the point her son was kidnapped. Detectives would then confront Patricia with evidence they found, proving that her story didn't really check out. She was seen on multiple different security cameras throughout that day, and there was witnesses who saw her with Alejandro. Detectives spent hours questioning Patricia that Friday night before she was eventually booked into the Turner Guilford Night Correctional Facility. Patricia is facing multiple felonies, including kidnapping, attempted murder, murder in the first degree, child with great bodily harm, along with some other charges. Patricia would lawyer up and ultimately plead not guilty.
And we're following breaking news tonight. The GBI says this police officer lied about getting shot in the line of duty. Well, now there are warrants for her arrest. The GBI just announced that Jackson police officer Sherry Hall will face a list of charges. Now, they include making false statements, tampering with evidence, and violation of oath of office.
Well, agents say that Hall reported that she confronted a black man who was standing near a wood line in a cul-de-sac, and he shot her. But agents now say that was a lie. Fox 5's Morris Diggs just got information from the police.
The story this Jackson officer told about some black man shooting her is not true, according to the authorities.
For 2 weeks, the good people of the city of Jackson have poured out their hearts, their expressions of concern, and their support for what we believe to be a police officer, one of our own, harmed in the line of duty. I share their disappointment in what we now believe to be a ruse.
High definition.
A victim turned suspect. Police say a Fresno woman lied to them about being kidnapped and robbed over the weekend. Tonight we have new details on that case.
Police say Maria Gonzalez claimed she was kidnapped by 2 men at Cedar and Floridora in southeast Fresno and then taken to an orchard in Carruthers. But officers say she now admits she made the whole thing up.
CBS 47's Angelica Lalani joins us live at police headquarters. Angelica, so why would she make this up?
Well, Chief Gyers says that it all had to do with money that Gonzalez owed to two subcontractors that worked for her family's business. But because she didn't have the money, she made the whole story up about the robbery, according to investigators. Fresno police say this woman, 32-year-old Maria Gonzalez, spun a web of lies, claiming she was kidnapped, carjacked, and robbed of $9,000 at gunpoint.
Fact is, until we were able to put all of the pieces together, some of her story made sense, but a lot of the story did not.
Chief Jerry Dyer says Gonzalez claims she was pistol whipped, tied up and gagged and left in Carruthers. Officers say Gonzalez had scratches and bruises to go along with her story. She also claims she was sexually assaulted and was taken to the hospital to be treated. But investigators say the evidence didn't back up her claims.
There was only one set of footprints located out there near the vehicle, and those one set of footprints belonged to the victim.
Police say after talking with her for more than 2 hours and sharing video of where and when she claimed the incident occurred, Gonzalez fessed up to faking the crime.
Truth is that Maria Gonzalez made up this entire story for the purpose of letting someone know that $9,000 had been stolen from her.
Dyer says now they may arrest her for falsifying a police report.
And not only did this create an enormous amount of work and pull our detectives off of other cases, but it created a lot of fear in our community. For that, this individual has to be held accountable.
Now, Dyer says filing a false police report is a misdemeanor, but says they are talking with the DA to see what the possible penalties could be for scaring the community and for using all of the police resources. For now, live in downtown Fresno, I'm Angelica Leilani, CBS 47 Eyewitness News.
Brent Posada from Redding, California, intentionally shot himself in the stomach and then told police that a black man shot him in the stomach. There's the classy gentleman that we're talking about. So he went to the authorities and he told them the following, that a black male adult, mid to late 20s, 6 foot tall, 185 pounds, black hair, approached him and pointed a black handgun at him. Posada said he pushed the man's arm to the side as the gun went off and he was hit in the stomach. Well, the cops realized through pictures of his wounds and through interviewing him that there were some inconsistencies. They didn't really understand what happened. So finally he admitted that he shot himself in the stomach.
Now we hear so many white supremacists and those alike use phrases like victim mentality against black people for acknowledging real harm against us, yet white media runs the same story of Jussie Smollett, in the hopes of covering their tracks and changing the narrative. Same process is happening with Diddy and the media portraying him as some kind of gatekeeper of Hollywood. These images are important to white society, as it dictates public perception. Some would believe me making this video exposing racism is racist. White supremacist, with the help of people of color, have used the tactic of if everyone's a racist, no one's a racist, blurring the lines of discrimination. Language is one of white supremacist most effective tools, and they have the world deep in their maze, playing their games and living their lies. I said all that to ask this. With all the fork-tongued anti-black devils who exist in the past and still exist today with their lies, how can we be certain of the statistical studies on crime and other subjects published by white society? Statistics also said that black Americans are more impacted by COVID-19, but that turned out to be a lie in order to set us up for a vaccine. These people pull the levers of society as they see fit. They have shown that they are able and willing to lie on black people if the possibility of getting away presents itself. There has been countless who got away with their lies and people in powerful positions who don't have tabs placed on them.